This is NASJA Professional Development. It's January 19th, and we're pleased to provide some advice on smartphone photography. I'm Jeff Blumenfeld, president of NASJA, and just a few points I'd like to bring across before we come to our guest speaker. We currently have 130 press members and 55 corporate members in the association. We'll be celebrating our 60th anniversary in 2023. Be sure to read the January newsletter, which was sent to you all. We're also going to have a survey that goes out shortly so we can learn how the board can better serve your interests. So look for that survey. On February 23rd, we're going to have a session on pitching stories to the media. That also will be on Zoom. And on March 23rd will be our annual meeting. You don't have to take notes. I will tell you more in the newsletters when they come out. Please start thinking about who you would nominate for the Carson White Award. That could be anybody in the ski or snow sports industry. Bob Gillen Award, that would be a corporate member who's involved in promotion. And the Mitch Kaplan Award could be any journalist, anywhere basically in the world, who is fosters the kind of guy that Mitch Kaplan was, who gave a lot back to children in the sport. And so those nominations are due on February 20th. You heard it here first. We had a fun little Name the Newsletter competition because I was tired of just calling it newsletter. I'm announcing now that Larry Turner from Malin, Oregon, a freelance photographer, came up with the winning name. The winning name for the newsletter is NASJA Snow Scoops. And the tagline will be the well-groomed source for all things snow sports. So you'll look forward to seeing the next issue of Snow Scoops next month. Our Hirsch judging for the Hirsch Awards, that's well underway in the categories of books, words, and images. And so if there are any questions about anything that I just mentioned, just raise your hand or we'll keep going here.
Does Larry get a prize for that incredible
yes, he does. Yes, he does. He gets a $100 gift card.
All right.
So thank you for asking. I just emailed him because I don't have his phone number, but he'll be getting that, and that'll be NASJA Snow Scoops. So I have known Mark Phillips for at least 25 years. I can recall when I hired him to photograph history's highest and longest tightrope walk, also called a skywalk, and actually sent Mark to China to shoot that. And he'll talk a little bit about that. And Mark was with me in the mid-1990s when Killington brought their new skyship gondola and showed it on display at the Whitney Museum of Art in Manhattan, because the skyship gondolas at the time had artwork around the side of it. So Mark was with me then. Mark and I used to talk about a signature photo. Take as many photographs as you want, I would say to a photographer. I just need one. Photographer would say, well, what one? I said, the best one. I need one picture that depicts that event. And Mark consistently was able to come back. No matter how many images he shot, he always found one image that told the story. So Mark began his career in the media. He graduated from Randolph Technical College with a degree in photojournalism. He spent 20 years traveling the world using technology to meet daily deadlines. He worked as a staff photographer for the Tampa Tribune. He's a lifelong New Yorker. They moved to, became a staff photographer for the Associated Press in 1992. He won first place awards for sports photography in the Pictures of the Year competition. First place from the Baseball Hall of Fame when he was working with Agence France Presse. And he made use of early digital technology in 1994. He transmitted daily coverage of Nelson Mandela's election as president of South Africa. He used CompuServe at the time, the first worldwide computer service. And in 1995, if you look over Mark's left shoulder, there's a picture of a walk across the Three Gorges in China. And Mark it was the first digital photo transmission from the interior of China. And in 2001, if we have time at the end, Mark will talk about the photograph that he took on 9/11. Now he's back to his roots. His company is South Brooklyn Internet. He still produces websites, but his love, of course, is photography. I've asked Mark to talk about, all of us travel with these things in our pocket. And I've asked Mark, how do we get the most out of smartphone photography? And so that brings us to Mark. Please mute yourself, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end, and we'll be out within an hour. Mark, how about that build up?
All right, let's get this up.
What a build up.
A build up. And I lost my share screen, Jeff. I'm sorry.
You lost your share. Oh, this works. This
Yeah.
works. So you lost your share screen. Okay.
Yes, I did.
Just a minute. Okay. Try one more time.
There we go. I got it now.
There you go.
Are you seeing my screen now, Jeff?
Yeah, we do. Yep.
Okay.
Well, we see your screensaver.
Yes. Let me just get this out of the way.
Technology, it's a wonderful thing.
There we go.
There we go. Got it.
Hey, so let me introduce myself again. I'm Mark Phillips. I always like to add.
Okay, Mark, you're breaking up. Mark,
Oh,
Mark, you're breaking up. Are you on the right Wi-Fi? We had a rehearsal team. It worked great.
yes, we did. Is that better?
We'll keep talking.
It's good for me.
Okay. So I am Mark D. Phillips, and I had to add that D because there's too many other journalists with the same name of Mark Phillips. And when I started getting credits on the AP, one of my bosses said, there's this guy in Canada who's on CNN all the time named Mark Phillips. We think you should add your middle initial. And I went along with them. So now everything that I do, I give the credit Mark D. Phillips. It's markdphillips.com. But, I did come up through the newspaper and wire services, and I had the advantage that at the time we were the digital proving ground for all this technology that was coming out. So, I went to South Africa with a Mac laptop, transmitted photographs back. At the time, it was cutting edge, and now I could do the whole thing with my smartphone, which kind of blows my mind. You have this little smartphone that you can connect with everything in the world is through your smartphone now. So when I started shooting more with a smartphone, I was coming up with ideas of how I could use that smartphone in connection with my DSLR. And one of the first things I did was came up with a way where I could hook the phone to my camera and use it as something to help me come up with better captions, better lead ups to what each image that I captured was. So the smartphone has really taken over my whole career, and it's really changed the way I do photography. I shoot a lot of video with my iPhone, and I don't shoot that much with my DSLR, because what I love about the iPhone is you can put it anywhere. Like I've come up with little clamps, different little ways that I can stick an iPhone like this on the side of a canoe with a $1 clamp that has a magnet on the other side from the dollar store. And I just stick it wherever I think I'm going to get good video, and just play with it and see what I get. I've used the iPhone since it first came out, since it was first introduced, At first I considered it a toy. You know, it wasn't really like something I would use to do photos that I would put out to newspapers. And at the time, the quality wasn't good enough. Now we've got photos coming out of iPhones that are about half as good, I would say, as a DSLR. So where do we go next with iPhones? You know, my biggest complaint about the iPhone has always been that we don't have methods of using telephoto lenses with it. And that's really why I'm going to stick with high quality cameras, because right now, you know, you can't get extreme telephoto lenses that give you good results with iPhones. You can't get good exposure controls, but the convenience factor is just what really draws you to the iPhone. You know, what better way than to pull a camera out of your pocket on your ski jacket when there's a blizzard at Cannon Mountain, which is on that top photo. You know, I was doing a travel story about Cannon Mountain, and I was up on the mountain in this blizzard, and I went, I don't want to take my phone out. I mean, my camera out of my backpack. So let's just see if the iPhone will capture what I need. And I think it gave a cool effect for what was skiing on a blizzard at Cannon Mountain. The photo underneath, now that's with a extreme telephoto at the Killington FIS World Cup. And could you get photos like this with your iPhone? Maybe with the iPhone 12 Pro, which I know you're getting. I'd like to see the results out of it. I mean, the built-in telephotos in it, we'll have to see what they do and if they're going to give us the results that we want. But right now, you know, getting 10 frames a second with a DSLR, I just think that the quality level doesn't make it with iPhones. But then there's the other side of that. When you're doing pictures that are mainly on the internet, do you really need anything more than an iPhone? Two of the pictures of Michaela Schifrin on here were with the iPhone. One was a screen grab from the video. The other one was an iPhone photo. I don't know about you, but I can't really tell any difference. And the one in the middle is with my D500. So it was like a 90 megabyte file. But at this level, you can't tell any difference. But the difference is the non-virtual world. You know, that screen grab photo from the video will only print 3 inches by 3 inches on any good photo printer. The photo that was shot as a still from the iPhone will only print to a max about 9 inches by 9 inches. Where the D500 photo in the middle, you could print it 17 inches by 25 inches easily at home. So, but how often do you guys print photos? I still print them occasionally, but I don't think many people do. And then the whole question of telephoto versus wide angle. You know, I use my iPhone almost religiously as a wide angle camera. And so this was 2 photos from the same event at Killington, from the same rope line where we couldn't cross. So with the iPhone, the only photo I could get with it was the picture on the right. The one on the left was with my D500 and a 300 millimeter lens. But I think that the one on the right is storytelling. So does that mean that the iPhone didn't do its job? I think it did its job just fine. So, you know, you've got to think about composition with what you're doing with the iPhone because of the limitations. But also another limitation with the iPhone, and this is a big one to me, is not being able to use depth of field the way you really like. I mean, if you don't really understand what depth of field is, the basic definition of depth of field is the zone of acceptable sharpness within a photo where your focus point is set. The higher your f-stop is, the more that zone of focus stretches out either in front of or behind the subject. So like this photo here of a, you know, a wide shot of a race. The iPhone chose to shoot this photo at a 2400th of a second at f2.2, which is basically no depth of field. And when you look at this, the valley isn't clear. It's hard really to see the the windmills up at the top of the mountainside. So you have to make a choice about how you think you're going to use an iPhone photograph. When I printed this picture out, which the biggest I could print it was an 8x10, it didn't look good enough to me at all to print. So I've only used this online and only small. I didn't even use it this big at all. But, you know, that depth of field issue, you can kind of defeat it a little bit in cases like this. What I like to do is use connecting elements, you know, that physical line going from the person at the top of the crest of the hill over to the trees really gives you a feeling that there's more depth in the photo than is really in focus. And also the fact that I threw that little bit of color up on that crest of the hill in a monochromatic scene really gives you a much more depth to the photograph than you would actually, than is really actually there. So that's one of the things that I think everybody should start thinking about. Think about the composition within the image. But then there's this feature on the iPhone, which I consider one of the best things that they ever developed, the panorama. And when the panorama is used right, it can be such a great storytelling device. You know, Photoville, which is up on the top of the first panorama, it's a premier photography event that they hold under the Brooklyn Bridge every year. And what they do is they set up all of these shipping containers in their individual photo galleries. So it's massive. And trying to photograph this event in just a regular standard 3:4 frame, you can't get anything that really shows the vastness of it and where it's set. And what I did, especially with this photograph, was I used that pink gallery on the right as the anchor point on the right side. And then if you go over to the left, I used the buildings of Manhattan in that top left corner as the anchor point there to really bring the whole image together and really show how massive that event was. The photo underneath, now that was, you know, I have to say I've started using my iPhone to really document COVID-19 in a way that I never thought I could with my DSLR. You know, this photo here, this was my favorite ski area in Massachusetts called Blandford Ski Area. And in March 2020, when they closed for COVID, they closed the mountain forever. And this was one of the last days that the mountain was open. And I just wanted to capture an image of the ski area. And if you notice, there's nobody there. It was one of the first times I'd ever been there with nobody there. And that's what COVID-19 did. And this panorama feature in the iPhone allowed me to capture an image like that I feel is unique. And I will remember this photo probably my whole life. It's like, it's going to become one of the photos that I really, really enjoy to talk about. So life in COVID-19. You know, this changing your boots in the parking lot thing is a really big deal for a lot of people. And, you know, my daughter races masters. And I've been trying, you know, I've been using the iPhone because whenever you pull out the DSLR, people start playing to the camera. And I don't want that. You know, I shoot journalistically and I really want to capture moments the best that I can. And I find that using the iPhone is the best way to do that. And the other thing, you know, I don't know how many of you think about this in photography, but this was one of the first things I was taught by one of my favorite instructors. Always think the rule of thirds. Put your subject of the photograph in a third of the photograph and use the rest to complement that third. So this getting ready for skiing and COVID, you know, getting down low, which is another great thing that you can do with the iPhone that's hard for me now at 62 to do with my DSLR. I don't even like to go down on my knees with my DSLR anymore. But with the iPhone, I can just hold it down at my knee and take a photo and see what I'm doing and get a photo like this. So then, you know, I started taking my iPhone with me when I was going back to Brooklyn and not even pulling out my DSLR most of the time because I could capture images so quick. You know, we used to love in the media talking about getting grab photos. We called it F8 and be there. You know, you'd have your camera ready, set at F8 so that whenever you picked it up, everything was in focus and you could just take the image. The iPhone is great for that because you pull it out of your shirt pocket, you click the button. You know, this photograph here was on Broadway in Times Square at 1:30 in the afternoon. And there wasn't another person on the street. And suddenly that guy turned around the corner and walked across that 76 trombones. And he looked so dejected. And it said to me, this is what New York is now. And I call this picture a visual frenzy. I don't usually like shooting pictures that I consider so overwhelming that you can't focus on one item. But I feel like that guy walking in the center of the frame became like the thing that broke up that visual frenzy and drew your eye down to that one section. And then you suddenly realized that he's the only person in that image. So once again, it's all about composition. And the iPhone screen is a great item to compose with. This is that Photoville. This was from the same spot where the panorama was taken. So now this year's Photoville 2020 was canceled, and they built this fence with photographs on it throughout Brooklyn Bridge Park, and that's the whole photo show. So I decided to try to get something with my iPhone that was complementing that picture of the panorama. And where all of those shipping containers were was right on the other side of this fence. So I've combined some of the same elements from that panorama into this photograph. And the other thing with the iPhone, fill the screen as much as you can. I try to make sure that almost every image I shoot with my iPhone is full frame. This is another thing that I really love about the iPhone is taking pictures at night. You know, with my DSLR, I would have set up a tripod and played with this scene and done more than I did with my iPhone, but I like these two images, and the iPhone captures nighttime views so well. But the only problem is you lose that depth of field that I was talking about earlier. So like if you look at the picture on the left with the police line, you can see that the police line blue is all perfectly sharp, but look down the street and it's completely out of focus back in the back. So to defeat that at night, I decide to use composition in lines like I talked about earlier. So here you go, you have that slow yellow sign that draws your eye. And then the yellow line going down the middle of the street draws your eye back into the photograph, and you suddenly realize there's no pedestrians back there. And this is 9 o'clock on a Saturday night on Fifth Avenue in Brooklyn, New York, which usually is one of the hopping places because it's all bars and restaurants. The wine bar on the left, you can see they've built outdoor places for patrons to sit, and the iPhone captured it perfectly. Look at the light values in there. You can see the person so well inside that one little enclosed area. But there's nobody else there at 9 o'clock on a Saturday night, except the guy walking away on the far right. And if you noticed, I used composition where I used the curb line to draw your eye to him so that you can see him as well. So, you know, the iPhone is a great tool, but you have to think about your photograph that you're capturing with it. So that's my COVID thing. Now I want to talk a little bit about ways that you can use the iPhone to get certain images that you feel like you couldn't get because you can't shoot fast enough getting a still image. I love using the slow motion video capture on the iPhone. I think it's one of the best video features that they have, because you can shoot a video like this. This is a racer doing their slip down the race course. And I was going to see if I could include something of that preparing for the race. And I decided, well, I'll just shoot it in slow motion video and see what I can pull out of it, because this was only going to be an internet-based story. It wasn't going to be printed anywhere. So I knew that I didn't really have to worry about high quality images. So I went down the slip course beside her and just did the video. And then as we reached the bottom, you can do a wonderful thing. You can stop the video, you can play it, and you can hit the pause button. And then you can slide your thumb along the bottom run and almost go frame by frame till you find the frame that you like. So as you see on this video here, she's finishing up, and in a second the video will switch to what I'm talking about. Of course, I'm always talking faster than it runs. But then see, you can slide it back and find that spot that you go, okay, that's not a bad image. Let's see if I can use that. And then just grab a simple screen grab of the image. And here we go, click, come on. There we go, and there's the still. So once you get that still, then you have the option of going into the wonderful, wonderful Photoshop tools that are built into the iPhone. And I don't know how many of you use them, or how many of you use Photoshop or Lightroom or any of the other softwares that are available, but the iPhone rivals any of them with its editing tools. I mean, I love being able to crop, straighten easily within there, and also check and see, okay, if what would be the best Instagram image out of this? You can crop it down, figure out exactly what you want, and then start using some of the other tools. I don't like the auto feature. I've never liked how it picks to brighten and darken items, but you can change exposure. You can change the highlights. You can change the brilliance. You can take down the highlights that are blown out. The one thing that I don't like about the iPhone is I think it takes blacks too dark. So now you have this wonderful choice of lightening up the shadows on the image. And you can take that and bring some detail back into the blacks and give it a little better feel, and also give it a little more depth, because that black just sucks all the life out of the image. It just makes you feel like there's nothing in that spot except blackness. Saturation, this is where you can turn the photo into a black and white. You just desaturate the image, take out all the color, and then you have a perfect black and white image. So that's to me, that's the easiest way to do black and white on an iPhone, or even in Lightroom or Adobe Photoshop. Warmth is a great thing. If you feel like the snow is too blue, add a little warmth into the image and take that blue out. All of these controls are very, very strong. One thing though, don't over process the image, because don't make it look not real, okay? So other than that, I mean, I think that what we've got is, we've got a powerful tool in our pocket, and take advantage of it. It's a great item to use.
Oh, great, Mark. Tell us how you composed the gondola.
How I composed the gondola. Okay, let me get the gondola.
Remember, I'm hanging all over Mark. Mark, did you get the shot? Do you have the shot? Do you have the client in the photo? Are they shaking hands? Are they smiling? And Mark says, don't worry, I got a shot. And this was the photo. Remember,
Hold on, I'm
Killington,
gonna call that photo up for you. Give me 2 seconds.
Killington launched their
There we
new,
go.
their new.
The gondola from Killington. I can actually still remember this day, Jack. You called me up and you said, "Okay, we're gonna put this Killington gondola at the Whitney Museum," and I'm like, "Oh God, that's just gonna be like a nightmare." And he goes, "Okay, they're delivering it at this time. Why don't you come over when they deliver it?" I never expected them to put it on the sidewalk in New York City and just sit it there for like 10 minutes. I mean, and then when this guy walked up with his dog and started looking in it, and I went, that's the image that Jeff's going to love. I knew it from the second I shot it because the guy looks like he's in Florida. He doesn't look like he's in New York. It's such an anti-skiing image to me. And, and this goes back to what I was talking about telephoto lenses. If I'd shot this with an iPhone, everything behind him would have been in focus. Where, I shot this with, I think I shot this with with either a 300 or a 400 millimeter lens so that I could get that whole background out of focus behind it and really draw you into the gondola.
So in terms of composition, do you think you should have gotten more of the left side as we're looking at the picture?
You mean the whole gondola?
Yeah.
I did, there were frames that I did.
Oh.
But, like we said, there's one image that jumps out at you. And the way the guy was bent over looking into the gondola and the dog showing no interest at all, I just thought that was the perfect moment.
So then sometimes when you're shooting, you don't know what you've got until you look at it closely. And that brings us to your 9/11 photograph. So
My
you
9/11
shot, if you
photograph.
pull that up.
Yeah,
So
9/11. 2001 was early digital cameras. I mean, the digital camera was kind of, it was borderline for newspaper usage. Like you could get an 8x10 image out of a digital camera back then. That was the highest quality you could really get. So all of us were all shooting film and digital at that point, because not if you needed something high quality, the digital camera just wouldn't make it. So 9/11 happened. I was at home. My daughter had started her first day of God, she was only 4 years old. So she was in preschool. And that was the only reason I was at home. And we heard on the Today Show that a plane had flown into the World Trade Center. And I ran up to the roof of my building in Brooklyn, and I had a film camera and I had a digital camera. And when I opened the roof of the to get out onto the roof, when I opened the hatch to get out on the roof, I heard the largest explosion I'd ever heard. So I stepped out on the roof and I had my digital camera around my neck and I raised it up and took a photo of the World Trade Center on fire. I mean, both buildings. When I was starting up, it was one building on fire. When I got up there, it was both. And believe it or not, this was the first frame that I took. This was the very first photo that I took with digital. And I stayed up there for about 45 minutes. One of my neighbors on the roof behind me was Richard Pyle, who is one of the top reporters at the AP in New York. And he was on the phone with the office telling them, Mark Phillips is on his roof taking photographs. You need to call him right now. I hadn't worked for AP at that point since 1993, and I hadn't worked for AFP since 1997. And AP bought my photos for one-time use, and they bought the digitals because that was what I had that they could send out that moment. This was the first photograph that they sent out of the World Trade Center attack. And the editor at AP, me, no one saw this face in the photograph. And the next morning, 3 newspapers had run this picture, their full front pages, and they started getting phone calls like crazy. Who put this face in the photograph? Who put this face there? And then people started sending me emails by the hundreds. And I'll tell you, I ended up with over 25,000 emails in that first 3 months. And I can't tell you how many of them, the subject line was, "Is it real?" And that, you know, I wrote a little ebook about this, and I titled it, "Is it real?" because that's what everybody was asking.
But you didn't see it while you were shooting it.
Oh God, no. I mean, I just saw everything on fire and smoke. I mean, you know, this was a distance from my apartment of about, I guess as the crow flies, it was about 3 miles. So, you know, this was a pretty intense moment. And actually this image is cropped some. This is only about half of the image. The full image has a lot more smoke at the top. Like I've cut off like half the image at the top.
And you had to send your camera to Olympus?
No, you know, at the time, you know, this was early digital. People didn't know anything about it. So people were accusing me of digitally manipulating the image and putting the face into the photo before I sent it to AP. And I had to send the original file from the camera to Olympus, and they were able to go into that file and look at their corporate data to find out if it had been taken into a advanced editor and changed it all. And the only thing I had done to this image when I sent it to AP was resize it. I didn't crop it. I didn't do anything to it before I sent it to AP. So if I had taken that photo into Adobe Photoshop before I sent it to AP, I couldn't have proved that I hadn't manipulated the image.
Right. Well, getting back to happier thoughts, let me kick off the questions for you by asking you about those attachments that you can get for iPhones. They give you a wider lens, wider angle, or zoom. Do you use those?
No, I don't. You know, I made the decision a while back that, you know, with the way photography is going right now, you know, with everybody shooting with iPhones, I've been trying to shoot either with an iPhone or with a extreme telephoto lens. Those are like the 2 types of photographs I'm taking now. I'm not shooting much in that middle range at all. It's like I think that the iPhone, until they get the picture quality up to the level of a digital camera, I don't really want to make it my primary method of photography. But I mean, the iPhone 12 sounded pretty good. You know, in the words of Bon Jovi, we're halfway there. You know, the iPhone 12 is going to give you like I think it's a 35 megabyte file. Well, I'm using the D850 now, which gives me a 94 megabyte file. So really, you know, we're still only a third of the way there.
Mm-hmm. Let's open it up to questions. And Roger, now that you're getting the i12, we expect much better work out of you. Do you want to stop share?
Sure.
Yeah. And any questions from our group?
I'm curious, Jeff and David, how you go about getting the picture out of the camera to your computer. Do you? I send them as email attachments to myself.
Out of your iPhone?
Yeah.
You know, it depends. If I've shot a lot, I will hook up you know, a cable and run them that way and
Right.
drag them out that way, because I usually always have a cable with me, and it's usually the fastest way.
I see.
If I, you know, I do email them all the time. I mean, you know, it is the simplest way. And, you know, until we have to deal with them being too big, you know, like you can email, what is it now, like 5 to 7 of them at a time before it says the attachments are too big. So, you know, that's kind of a pain in the neck when you have like 12 emails with five images attached to it. And that's when I'll plug my iPhone into the laptop and pull them out.
Typically, it offers you the option of small, medium, or large files that you can send.
Yeah.
Even at the larger size, is there a diminishment in the quality? Are you losing quality by going to email?
You know, I've always thought that it's better to work from the largest file size that you have, because when you're resizing, you know, it's interpolating. So it's going to interpolate from the more data you have. When you resize an image, I think you get better results.
Sure.
And I think that's you know, we're always after, you know, the best quality we can get. But, you know, like I said earlier, you know, at 72 DPI, if your publication is only going to be on the internet, you know, all the rules are out of the book, in my opinion, because it's 72 DPI. Everything's equal at 72 DPI.
Gotcha.
Mark, why is it that you have to either use the cable or email? I know for me, my photos just transfer over automatically from my iPhone directly to photos on my computer.
Are you using AirDrop?
Nope.
No?
Nope.
The
It
cloud.
just automatically go every photo I take.
Oh, so you're using the cloud.
I guess.
Yeah. See, I don't like using cloud accounts. I just, because if the internet goes down and I can't, you know, I might have problems. So you know, I've stayed away from the cloud. And, you know, Google and Apple have enough of my images already. It's like I really don't want to put them up where somebody else is going to get them even more.
Gotcha.
Yeah. You're on mute, Lisa. You're on mute. There you go.
Sorry, I was trying to be a good citizen. I was recently photographing in the Seattle area at Stevens Pass, and it was a typical Northwest soupy day, low light, where the lights for night skiing come on at like 2:30 in the afternoon, that kind of day. And any suggestions about the hierarchy in which to use the different editing tools? Does one start with shadows or exposure, or just fiddle around and see what works best?
When you get into that period, what I like to do a lot, and this is something that I've used a lot in Lightroom. I'm trying to think if do we have a black option in the iPhone?
Yes.
Yes. So what I'll do is I'll open up the shadows and then take the blacks down, because you get a much different look than you do just opening the blacks with the black control. When you do that, it kind of turns everything that slight gray, or, you know, you get like a lot of gray in there that you've already got because there's no light. So what I find, opening up the shadows, bring down the blacks, and I like that richness. And, you know, then use the highlights and the whites to try to bring some life back into the image.
Great, thank you.
I'll throw a question in here. Talk about HDR, which is this mysterious feature on the phone.
Yes.
That comes up, which I don't quite understand. It's right there at the top.
You know, Jeff, I'll be quite honest, I don't use it.
Okay.
If somebody else wants to jump in on that one, I'd like to hear what other people say about the HDR, because I don't really use it. I mean, you know, I have friends who do, but I just haven't played around with it.
That's fair enough. Any other questions for Mark?
I have 2 questions. One is, what is the HDR supposed to do? And the second is, do you have any tips for recreating the pitch of when you take pictures of ski hills, usually they look so flat when the image comes out. Do you have any tips for, like adding back in the steepness?
That's one of the most difficult things to deal with all the time, because how do you add it back in? There's not really any way to do it. It's, you can print crooked. I see a lot of people printing their prints crooked, having the skis pointing more downhill, trying to give it a little more steepness to it. But, really, I'm after capturing the athlete as I'm trying to get their faces more than, I guess, the steepness factor, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I mean, what can you do? What can you do to make it look steeper? Play with it. That's really, I mean, we've got all these tools. Play with the image and try things. I mean, see if when you're doing the cropping, if you tilt your crop a little bit, see what that does. Tilting crops is a great thing that a lot of people don't do. You can tilt a crop to give a different feel to the image. I mean, sometimes having that diagonal rather than straight up and down works really well in a photograph.
That's a good idea.
We have time
HDR, I'll do what my daughter says, Google it.
we
I
have
was
time,
thought
It's high dynamic range. It's supposed to take a high dynamic range view and even it out so that it looks like it was shot daylight, nighttime, so that everything is equal within the image.
okay. We have time for a few more questions.
I have a practical question.
Sure.
How do you like take pictures with your mittens? How do you deal with your hands? And I
With
find
my
I
hand.
take off my mittens and then I lose them and then my hands freeze.
Whenever I'm shooting ski racing, I wear my Roush glove on my left hand and I wear a leather glove on my right hand with two heating packs.
Oh, interesting.
And I tape them to the outside so it doesn't burn my hand. But I'm always using a leather glove because I find that's the easiest glove that I've found to work the controls on my camera. And unfortunately, I have a pair of leather gloves where I did cut off the tip so that I can use my iPhone. And so what happens then, I have another glove that I'll put over that when my finger starts getting cold. And it's supposed to have a fingertip that works on the iPhone, but they never do when I need them to.
Well, that's great. Hey, Mark, thanks so much for taking the time to do this. Really appreciate it. And Mark is a Hirsch judge who will be looking at images that have been submitted. So we thank him for that as well. And we'll see you guys. We will see you guys on February 23rd on how to pitch the media, your stories. So
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, guys.
all right.
Adios.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Good seeing everybody.
Stay healthy. Stay healthy. Take care. Bye.
Bye.